Adventurers often frequent your shop for potions and gear, and that's because potions and good gear are a must for adventuring in the dungeons. But if you're hard-headed, here are some tips. The first major thing to know is that when you die you only get to keep the first 5 things in your inventory, not in your backpack, because your backpack will disappear. That's why it would be smart to keep important items on your body. Then tip number 2 is quite obvious if you have seen the shorts a few weeks ago. Because tip number 2 is that you don't want to stay too long on a floor. If you do this, the Wanderer will appear. And you don't want the Wanderer to appear. Because the Wanderer will destroy loot and chests. And most importantly, the Wanderer can kill you in one strike. Then tip number 3, I didn't realize immediately, it took me a while before I knew it, but you aren't always locked inside a room. The doors stay open sometimes, so you can just go even when the enemies are not defeated. Tip number 4 is quite an obvious one, but it comes in really handy, so I think we must discuss it. But with your bow you can charge it and then it can shoot through objects. Now, tip number 5 is really fun to know, but it's rather useless. If you have a weapon that performs a larger attack like a spear or a big sword, I prefer a big sword because a spear I don't know what you can do with a spear. But with a big sword, when you perform an attack you can pick up an object. Tip number 6 is quite a fun game feature. It's the white shimmering in the white room. They are there for like 3 seconds, then you can go into a wave room, a pedestal room, an empty chest room or a fallen card room. Quite a fun feature, you can fall into those without any damage. You can find them in the fallen pits and the dark pits. There you see the white shimmering. But if you have the DLC you screwed up, because you often will see a room that will lead you to the DLC dungeon. So it's less often that you find a white shimmering, but rather find the green, I don't know what that is, goo. And that leads me to tip number 7, and I think tip number 7 is very clever, because I've never seen it being used before. But tip number 7 is that you want to dodge enemies, and if you're next to a pitfall and if you're in a bind, then just jump into the pitfall. Sometimes you will get damage, sometimes you won't because you'll enter a secret room, but it's an easy way to dodge enemies. Do note that the enemy's health will refresh. Now tip number 8 I really had to look up because I had no clue what this was, but the empty chest room isn't useless. It's a teleporting chest. This means that you can put items in it and then it will teleport home into a black chest. If you don't have the mimic pet already, this will be a pretty good solution. Now I'm lucky I discovered tip number 8 because I didn't know this at first, but you can use the wave room multiple times. So you can go from a wooden chest to a silver chest to a golden chest to a purple majestic chest. This means the higher the chest, the higher the loot. But I don't want you to die. So if you don't have enough health for it, stay at the wooden chest, stay at the silver chest, stay at the golden chest. If you really don't have enough health, don't go far. Then tip number 10 is quite an obvious one because it's just a game feature. In the Wooden Head Eri's shop you can buy enchantments. These enchantments will sometimes stack, so look out for that. Then we have one tip divided into 2 tips for before you want to go into the dungeons. Because you need to think if you want to go exploring in the dungeons or do you want to defeat enemies and bosses. If you want to go exploring, the best option of equipment would be a short sword and shield and a bow. And your best loadout for defeating bosses and enemies would be a big sword and a short sword and shield so you can block. The last tip is more of a crossover with the town part, but you have a familiar farm next to your house. In this familiar farm you can choose familiars and you want one for exploring or you want one for defeating. If you like this video, consider subscribing. I'm trying to reach 1000 subs by the end of the year. And if you like this game, check out this video because I will explain all in Moonlighter.